Get on the ground now!
I'm your new police chief.
I don't care what you claim to be! Get down!
You're making a huge mistake.
Stop resisting! Stop resisting!
Dr. Amelia Richardson adjusted her blazer one final time as she approached the Riverside Police Department. It was 7:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning that would change everything. The coffee in her hand was still steaming, the badge folder tucked securely under her arm. After 20 years in law enforcement, she was finally here. Her first day as police chief. She paused for a moment outside her car, checking her reflection in the window. Professional navy blazer, crisp white shirt, her grandmother's pearl earrings for luck. Everything was perfect. She'd dreamed of this moment for decades. The community was counting on her. The mayor had specifically hired her to reform this department, to bridge the gap between police and the people they served. She took a deep breath, grabbed her briefcase and started walking toward the main entrance. Everything was perfect, and then it wasn't. Before we continue with this unbelievable story, make sure you're subscribed because what happens next will shock you. Hit that subscribe button now. Two officers stood near the main entrance of the Riverside Police Department. Officer Martinez, a 15-year veteran with graying temples and a permanent scowl etched into his weathered face. Officer Thompson, younger, maybe 8 years on the force, with the kind of swagger that came from never being challenged, never being questioned, never being held accountable. They were having a casual conversation about the previous night's basketball game when Martinez noticed movement in his peripheral vision. A black woman walking across the parking lot toward their building. Toward their territory. The conversation stopped mid-sentence. Martinez elbowed Thompson and whispered, "What's she doing here?" Thompson's eyes narrowed as he watched Amelia approach. Probably lost. They always get lost in this neighborhood. Or looking for the welfare office, Martinez added with a smirk. That's 2 blocks over. Should we tell her? Thompson asked mockingly. Nah. Let's see what kind of story she comes up with first. They didn't see a fellow law enforcement officer walking toward them. They didn't see their new boss approaching for her first day of work. They didn't see a woman with 20 years of experience, 3 college degrees, and a mandate from the mayor to reform their department. They saw a black woman. And in their minds that meant she didn't belong here. The racial profiling began before she even reached the steps. 2 white officers, positioning themselves like sentries guarding their domain, ready to challenge anyone who didn't look like them. Martinez stepped forward, his hand resting casually on his belt in a gesture designed to intimidate. Thompson moved to flank him, creating a wall of authority meant to make someone feel small, unwelcome, threatened. These were the officers Dr. Richardson had been hired to retrain. The mindset she'd been brought in to change. The problem she was supposed to solve. And they were about to make her the victim. As Amelia walked closer, she could see the 2 officers watching her. Their body language had shifted from casual to confrontational. She'd seen this before, the way some officers positioned themselves when they decided someone was a threat based on nothing more than appearance. But she was approaching her own police station. On her first day as police chief. Surely this was just a misunderstanding that would be cleared up quickly. Surely. Excuse me, ma'am? Officer Martinez's voice carried across the morning air, loud enough for other officers in the parking lot to hear. Official. Commanding. Designed to establish dominance. This is a restricted area. You can't be loitering around here. Amelia stopped, genuinely confused. She was still 50 feet from the entrance, walking on a public sidewalk that led directly to the police station's front door. The same sidewalk that hundreds of people used every day to conduct legitimate business. Loitering? She kept her voice calm and professional, drawing on 2 decades of experience in tense situations. I'm here for work. I'm the new police chief. The words hung in the morning air like an impossible claim. Martinez laughed. Actually laughed. A deep, dismissive sound that made it clear exactly what he thought of her statement. Right. And I'm the mayor. Look, lady, I don't know what kind of scam you're running, but you picked the wrong place. Thompson joined in with his own brand of condescending disbelief. Ma'am, police chiefs don't just walk up here off the street. You probably saw something on TV and thought you could come down here and cause some kind of trouble. The assumptions were immediate and automatic. She was running a scam. She was a troublemaker. She was someone who got her ideas from television rather than education and experience. She was, in their minds, inherently dishonest and inherently threatening. Cause trouble? Amelia's voice remained calm, but inside she was recognizing the coded language, the implicit bias, the automatic assumptions that came with being a black woman in a space these officers considered their own. I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to start my job. Your job. Martinez's tone dripped with disbelief and something approaching anger. Lady, what kind of job do you think you have here? You think you can just walk into a police station and declare yourself the boss? The assumption was clear and devastating. A black woman couldn't possibly have legitimate authority in their world. Couldn't possibly outrank them. Couldn't possibly be their superior. Amelia reached into her badge folder with deliberate, careful movements, the kind of movements that ensured no one could claim she was reaching for a weapon. She pulled out her official appointment letter. The seal of the city of Riverside was clearly visible at the top. The mayor's signature was clearly legible at the bottom. I'm Dr. Amelia Richardson. I was appointed police chief 3 months ago by Mayor Davidson. Today is my first day. She held the document out for them to see. Clear, official, undeniable proof of exactly who she was and why she was there. Martinez glanced at the letter for exactly 2 seconds, long enough to see it but not long enough to actually read it, before shaking his head with dismissive certainty. Nice try with the fake documents. You can get anything printed these days. Probably got this made at one of those copy shops downtown for $20. Officer Johnson emerged from the building at that moment, followed closely by Officer Davis. Both men took in the scene, their colleagues confronting a black woman who was holding official-looking paperwork, and immediately understood their role. They positioned themselves with Martinez and Thompson. 4 white officers now surrounding one black woman. A show of force. A demonstration of who belonged and who didn't. What's the situation here? Johnson asked, though his tone suggested he'd already made up his mind about what the situation was. Subject claims to be the new police chief, Martinez said with obvious sarcasm, emphasizing the word claims, like it was the most ridiculous thing he'd ever heard. Has some kind of fake paperwork to support her story. Johnson looked Amelia up and down, his expression making his thoughts crystal clear. The idea that this black woman could be their police chief was so absurd it didn't merit serious consideration. Let me guess, Davis added with a knowing smirk. You're here about some kind of discrimination complaint, right? That's usually what it is when they come in with the Fake Authority Act. Trying to intimidate us into giving you special treatment. The assumptions were multiplying like a virus. She was a chronic complainer, a professional victim, someone who used false claims of authority to manipulate the system. Someone who was inherently dishonest and inherently manipulative. Amelia pulled out her state police identification badge. Her name was clearly embossed in official lettering. Dr. Amelia Richardson. Her photograph was clearly visible. Her rank was clearly listed as police chief. This is my official state police ID, she said, holding it out for all 4 officers to see. And here are my personnel transfer documents from my previous position as deputy chief in Metro City. She showed them the complete paperwork trail. Her employment history stretching back 20 years. Her educational credentials including her PhD in Criminal Justice Administration. Her background check clearance at the highest levels. Her commendations and awards. Her spotless service record. Everything was official. Everything was real. Everything was undeniable. And everything was dismissed. Johnson barely glanced at the ID before shaking his head with practiced certainty. IDs can be faked. Anyone can get a fake badge made these days. There's websites online that'll make you anything you want, police chief, FBI agent, whatever. Documents can be forged, Davis added with the confidence of someone who had never been wrong about anything in his life. Happens all the time. You'd be surprised how many people try this exact same scam. Martinez stepped closer, invading Amelia's personal space in a way designed to intimidate. Ma'am, what you're doing right now is a felony. Impersonating a police officer. You're looking at serious prison time. Thompson nodded sagely as if he was doing her a favor by explaining reality. This is probably some kind of sovereign citizen thing, right? You read something online about how you can declare yourself a police chief and the government has to recognize it. The racist assumptions kept escalating with each exchange. She was too ignorant to understand the law, too gullible to avoid internet scams, too disconnected from reality to know the difference between fantasy and fact. She was, In their minds, exactly the kind of person who would fall for online conspiracies and then try to act them out in the real world. Amelia pulled out her smartphone, opening the calendar application that clearly showed, First Day Riverside PD Police Chief, scheduled for today at 8 a.m. She showed them emails from the mayor's office confirming her appointment. Messages from the Human Resources Department about her first day orientation. Communications from the city manager about her reform mandate. Dozens of official communications from multiple city departments, all confirming the same basic fact. She was exactly who she said she was. Anyone can put anything in their phone, Thompson said dismissively, as if he was talking to a child who didn't understand how technology worked. You can type, Police Chief, in your calendar right now. Doesn't make it real. Johnson nodded with the wisdom of experience. I could put, President of the United States in my phone and send myself fake emails. Wouldn't make me the president. Davis laughed, a sound full of contempt and superiority. She probably watched some cop show on Netflix and thought she could just walk in here and take over the department. Every piece of evidence was dismissed. Every credential was questioned. Every document was assumed to be fake. Not because the evidence wasn't convincing, but because the person presenting it was black. The assumption underlying every dismissal was clear. A black woman was inherently incapable of holding such a position of authority, so any evidence to the contrary must be fraudulent, forged, or fictional. Ma'am, you're now officially under suspicion of impersonating a police officer, Martinez announced with the gravity of someone delivering a death sentence. That's a felony offense that carries up to 5 years in state prison. More officers had begun to gather in the parking lot. Word was spreading through the building that there was a situation outside. Instead of recognizing their new police chief, they saw their colleagues dealing with what appeared to be a problem that needed to be solved. 6 officers now surrounded one woman who had shown them overwhelming, undeniable proof that she was exactly who she claimed to be. But they couldn't see past their racial bias to accept the evidence right in front of their eyes. Officer Martinez's voice suddenly shifted to a higher pitch, the tone that people use when they want to sound like victims rather than aggressors. This suspect is becoming aggressive. She's threatening officers with fake police credentials. Amelia stood perfectly still, her hands visible at all times, her voice calm and measured. She had not raised her voice once. She had not made any threatening movements. She had not stepped toward any of the officers. She had simply shown them legal documentation proving her identity and asked them to verify it through proper channels. But Martinez was now performing for an audience, using the coded language designed to justify what was about to happen. She's getting hostile, Thompson added, even though Amelia hadn't moved or changed her tone. Classic escalation pattern when they get caught in their lies. Johnson nodded with the authority of experience. They always get aggressive when you don't fall for their scam. Probably going to claim we're harassing her because of her race. Davis stepped back theatrically as if he was in physical danger. I'm feeling threatened by her behavior. She's giving me aggressive vibes. The assumptions were now becoming official narrative for the record. The black woman was inherently aggressive, naturally threatening, predictably hostile when her scam was exposed. She was dangerous not because of anything she had done, but because of what they expected her to do based on their racial bias. We need backup immediately, Martinez called out to Thompson, who was already reaching for his radio with theatrical urgency. Thompson keyed his radio, his voice filled with the kind of urgency reserved for genuine emergencies. Dispatch, this is Unit 47. We need immediate backup at headquarters for an impersonation suspect. Black female, approximately 40 years old, claiming to be a police chief, in possession of multiple forged documents. Amelia felt her stomach drop as she heard the description go out over the radio waves. She knew exactly what happened when police called in black female suspect descriptions. She knew how these situations escalated. She knew that being right wouldn't necessarily keep her safe. The suspect is acting increasingly aggressive and refusing to leave city property, Thompson continued into his radio, creating a false narrative that would justify whatever happened next. Possible mental health issues. She seems to genuinely believe her own lies. The final assumption. A black woman claiming authority over white officers must be mentally ill, delusional, disconnected from reality. It was the only way their minds could process the cognitive dissonance of a black woman outranking them. Please expedite backup units. Situation is escalating rapidly. We may need to use force to control the suspect and protect public safety. Amelia's phone was still recording in her pocket, capturing every word, every lie, every false accusation. The GPS tracking device in her official police chief badge was pinging her location every 30 seconds, creating a digital trail that would later prove exactly where she was and when. But in that moment, surrounded by 6 white police officers who had just called for backup to arrest her, all she could think about was survival. All she could remember were the statistics about black women and police encounters. All she could hear were her father's words from 30 years earlier about staying alive first and being right second. This was about to get much worse. Hit that notification bell right now because this situation is about to get incredibly intense, and you won't want to miss what happens next. "Do not touch me," Dr. Richardson said clearly, her voice carrying across the parking lot with the authority of someone who understood both her rights and the danger she was in. "I'm asking you to call Captain Williams inside. He's expecting me for our 8 a.m. meeting to discuss department reforms." But Officer Johnson stepped closer, deliberately invading her personal space in a move designed to provoke a reaction that could then be used to justify force. "Ma'am, you need to put your hands behind your back. We're taking you into custody for questioning about these forged documents." "I will not put my hands behind my back," Amelia responded with the calm professionalism of someone who had spent 20 years defusing volatile situations. "I am Dr. Amelia Richardson and I am your police chief. I am asking you to verify my identity through Captain Williams, who is inside expecting me, or through the mayor's office, which appointed me." Martinez shook his head with the confidence of someone who had never been wrong about anything. "Lady, you can drop the act now. We've seen this before. We know exactly what this really is." "What do you think this really is?" Amelia asked, genuinely curious about what narrative they had constructed in their minds. "Some kind of protest stunt," Davis suggested with dismissive certainty. "You're probably one of those Black Lives Matter activists trying to make some kind of political statement." Thompson nodded as if he'd solved a puzzle. "Or maybe she's filming this for TikTok. You know how they do, create fake confrontations for social media clout." Martinez added his own theory, "Could be a setup for a lawsuit. They come in here with fake credentials, we arrest them for impersonation, then they sue for racial profiling." The assumptions kept multiplying like a hydra. She was a political activist, a social media performer, a lawsuit scammer, a professional victim. Anything except what she actually was, their boss. The crowd was growing larger. Other officers arriving for their morning shifts stopped to watch the spectacle. Civilians walking past on their way to work pulled out their phones to record. A news van was approaching in the distance. The same van that was scheduled for the 9 a.m. meet and greet with the new police chief was arriving an hour early to capture her arrest. "Stop resisting," Officer Johnson shouted suddenly, even though Amelia hadn't moved a muscle. She recognized this tactic immediately. Create a verbal narrative of resistance to justify the use of force. Make the audio recording sound like the victim was fighting back when they were simply standing still. Establish reasonable doubt for later legal proceedings. "I am not resisting," Amelia said clearly, speaking as much for the recording devices as for the officers. "I am standing still with my hands visible. I am asking you to verify my identity with your supervising officer." But Johnson grabbed her arm anyway, his grip designed to cause pain and compliance. The moment his hand made contact, Amelia knew the situation had crossed the line from harassment into assault, from racial profiling into criminal behavior. "Don't touch me," she said firmly but without raising her voice. "I am not under arrest. You have no legal grounds to detain me. I am a sworn law enforcement officer." "She's resisting," Martinez shouted for the benefit of the gathering crowd and the recording devices. "Suspect is physically resisting arrest. Getting violent." Thompson added to the false narrative being created in real time. Multiple phone cameras were now recording the incident from different angles. The early arriving news van had stopped in the parking lot, and the professional cameraman was already filming with equipment that would capture everything in high definition. The irony was staggering. The woman hired to reform police brutality was about to experience it firsthand on camera, in front of the very building she was supposed to lead. Officer Davis moved behind Amelia while Johnson maintained his painful grip on her arm. Officer Torres emerged from the building and immediately joined the circle. This was now a coordinated takedown maneuver involving multiple officers, designed to control and subdue a suspect they had decided was dangerous based on nothing more than the color of her skin. "I'm your boss," Amelia shouted, loud enough for everyone in the parking lot to hear, loud enough for every recording device to capture. "I'm the police chief of this department. I'm Dr. Amelia Richardson." But her words fell on ears that refused to hear, minds that refused to process information that contradicted their racial assumptions. "She's completely delusional," Thompson said to the gathering crowd of officers and civilians. "Classic signs of a psychotic break. Probably been planning this for weeks. Definitely on drugs," Davis added with the certainty of someone making a medical diagnosis without any training. "They get these grandiose delusions when they're high. Think they're celebrities or government officials." Martinez nodded sagely. "Probably meth or PCP. Makes them feel invincible, gives them superhuman strength. That's why we need multiple officers to control her." The assumptions were now being used to justify overwhelming force. She wasn't really a police chief, she was having a drug-induced psychotic episode. She wasn't showing valid credentials, she was experiencing delusions of grandeur. She wasn't the victim of racial profiling, she was a dangerous person requiring maximum restraint. Johnson pulled her arm behind her back with unnecessary force while Davis pushed down on her shoulders. Amelia went to the ground hard, her knees hitting the concrete with a sound that made several bystanders wince. Her professional blazer tore as she fell. Her coffee cup shattered, sending hot liquid across the sidewalk in a pattern that would later be photographed as evidence. "Stop resisting," multiple officers shouted in unison, even though she was following every command and offering no physical resistance. "She's fighting back," Martinez yelled, though every camera angle clearly showed she was simply trying to protect her face as she fell. "Aggressive suspect," Thompson added to the false narrative being recorded for posterity. "Watch out, she might be armed," Torres called out, though Amelia was wearing a professional blazer with no place to conceal weapons. The handcuffs clicked around her wrists with the finality of a jail cell door slamming shut. Dr. Amelia Richardson, police chief of the Riverside Police Department, was now face down on the concrete outside her own station, in handcuffs, surrounded by the officers she was hired to lead. Security cameras captured every angle from the building's surveillance system. Body cameras worn by each officer recorded every word and every action. Cell phone videos documented every second from multiple perspectives. The news van's professional camera filmed it all in broadcast-quality high definition. The woman brought in to reform police brutality was experiencing it firsthand. The person hired to eliminate racial bias was becoming its victim. The leader appointed to change the department's culture was being brutalized by that very culture. They walked her through the front doors of the police station in handcuffs, past the reception desk where her official portrait was scheduled to be hung at 9:30 a.m., right after her meet and greet with the local news. Past the bulletin board where the memo announcing her first day had been posted for a full week. Past the conference room where her morning briefing with senior staff was scheduled to begin in exactly 17 minutes. Desk Sergeant Williams looked up from his paperwork and his coffee mug froze halfway to his lips. "What the hell is going on here?" he said, rising from his chair with the confusion of someone whose world had just stopped making sense. "That's Chief Richardson." The radio chatter stopped instantly. The casual conversation in the lobby ceased like someone had flipped a switch. Every officer within sight turned to look at the impossible scene. Their new police chief in handcuffs, her blazer torn, her knees scraped and bleeding from the concrete. Officer Martinez keyed his radio with panic creeping into his voice. Dispatch? We might have a serious problem down here." "What kind of problem?" the dispatcher's voice crackled back. "The kind that's going to make national news," Williams muttered under his breath. Captain Williams burst through his office door like a man whose house was on fire. "What in God's name is going on here? Why is Chief Richardson in handcuffs?" The 6 officers who had arrested their own boss stood there in stunned silence as the magnitude of their mistake began to sink in like cold water filling their lungs. Officer Thompson's voice was barely a whisper. She said she was the police chief, but we thought she was lying." "You thought what exactly, Thompson?" Captain Williams demanded. Thompson's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. The answer was obvious to everyone in the room, but saying it out loud would mean admitting to racial profiling, civil rights violations, and career-ending stupidity. We thought she was running some kind of scam, Martinez offered weakly. A scam? She showed you official identification. She had appointment letters. She mentioned my name specifically. But Captain, Johnson tried to explain, she didn't look like. She didn't look like what, Johnson? Johnson went silent, realizing he was about to say the quiet part out loud in front of multiple recording devices and witnesses. Captain Williams stared at the 6 officers, then at Dr. Richardson, who was still in handcuffs with her blazer torn and her dignity shredded, and the full scope of the disaster became clear. You arrested our police chief. On her first day. In front of news cameras. After she showed you valid identification. After she mentioned my name. After she told you exactly who she was. The radio crackled with dispatch trying to figure out what was happening. All units, be advised we have a Code Blue administrative emergency at headquarters. Repeat, Code Blue. Supervisor to the front desk immediately. Too late for that, Williams said grimly. This is already way beyond Code Blue. Captain Williams personally removed the handcuffs from Dr. Richardson's wrists while paramedics were called to check her scraped knees and torn clothing. The booking room had gone completely silent except for the clicking of computer keys and the hum of fluorescent lights that suddenly seemed too bright. I need to see every piece of identification and documentation you confiscated, Williams said to the arresting officers, his voice carrying the weight of someone who knew careers were about to end. Officer Martinez reluctantly handed over the badge folder he had taken from Dr. Richardson. Williams opened it with the care of someone handling evidence in a murder case and began reading aloud. Dr. Amelia Richardson, appointed police chief by Mayor Davidson, effective today's date, Tuesday, October 15th at 8 a.m. Official seal of the City of Riverside. Signed by the mayor, witnessed by the city attorney, filed with the State Personnel Board. He walked to the computer terminal and pulled up the personnel database, his fingers moving across the keys with increasing urgency. The screen populated with information that made the silence in the room even more deafening. Richardson Amelia Jane. Employee ID, PC 2024-001. Rank, Police Chief. Start date, today. Security clearance, Level 5 Top Secret. Salary grade, Executive Level 1. Direct report, Mayor Davidson. Williams kept reading from the screen, his voice growing harder with each detail. Previous position, Deputy Chief, Metro City Police Department. Years of service, 20. Disciplinary actions, 0. Commendations, 17. Awards, 12. Special recognition, 8. The room was so quiet that the air conditioning system sounded like a freight train. Williams pulled up additional screens, documenting the scope of what they had just done. Educational background, Ph.D. in Criminal Justice Administration, University of Southern California. Master of Public Administration, Georgetown University. Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice, Howard University, magna cum laude. He turned to the 6 officers with the expression of someone delivering a terminal diagnosis. Specialized training certifications. Crisis intervention, community policing, constitutional law, bias awareness training, de-escalation tactics, federal civil rights enforcement. Williams pulled up the appointment announcement from 3 months earlier, the one that had been emailed to every officer in the department. This was sent to all departmental personnel on July 18th. Her photograph was attached. Her complete biography was included. There was a mandatory briefing about her appointment scheduled for next week. Officer Johnson tried to speak. Sir, how are we supposed to know? I mean, she didn't really look like. She didn't look like what, Johnson? Williams interrupted, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Johnson's mouth snapped shut. The appointment was announced 3 months ago. Her photo has been in the department newsletter for 12 weeks. There was a memo on every bulletin board. Her official portrait was delivered yesterday and is sitting in my office waiting to be hung in the lobby. Her parking space has been marked, Police Chief, for a month. What exactly didn't she look like? Williams pulled up the body camera footage on his computer and began reviewing it in real time, the audio crystal clear through the speakers. This is a restricted area. You can't be loitering around here. I'm here for work. I'm the new police chief. Right. And I'm the mayor. Williams fast-forwarded through the footage. Nice try with the fake documents. IDs can be faked. Anyone can put police chief in their phone. This suspect is becoming aggressive. He paused the video and turned to face the officers. I want each of you to tell me exactly when in this footage Dr. Richardson becomes aggressive. Silence. I want you to point out exactly when she threatens any of you. More silence. I want you to show me exactly when she does anything other than calmly present legitimate identification and ask you to verify her identity through proper channels. The silence was so complete it felt like the air itself was holding its breath. If you think justice needs to be served here, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories of accountability. The mayor's phone had been ringing non-stop for the past 20 minutes. The news footage was already uploading to social media platforms and being shared at an exponential rate. The body camera recordings were being downloaded by internal affairs investigators who couldn't believe what they were seeing. Captain Williams made the announcement that would end 6 careers in one sentence. I need your badges, your service weapons, and your department-issued equipment. All of you. Right now. Sir, this was just a misunderstanding, Officer Martinez pleaded, his voice cracking like a teenager asking for a second chance. A misunderstanding? Williams's voice rose with each word. Let me tell you exactly what this was. This was racial profiling. This was excessive force against a superior officer. This was filing false police reports. This was assault under color of authority. This was violating the civil rights of the person hired to protect civil rights. This was creating a public relations nuclear bomb that will cost the city tens of millions of dollars and destroy whatever credibility we had left with the community. Williams turned to Martinez first, pulling up his personnel file on the computer screen. Rodriguez Miguel. 15 years of service. Excessive force complaints. 3, all involving people of color. Racial sensitivity training. Failed twice. Community relations training. Failed once. Bias awareness certification. Expired and not renewed. Your career is over. Martinez placed his badge on the desk with trembling hands. 23 years of law enforcement ending in a single moment of racial bias. Thompson James. 8 years of service. Internal affairs investigations for racial profiling. 2. Community complaints about inappropriate comments. 7. Diversity training. Failed multiple times. Bias incident reports. 4 documented cases. Williams's voice was clinical, precise, final. Done. Thompson's badge joined Martinez's on the desk, his swagger replaced by the reality of unemployment and unemployability in law enforcement. Johnson Robert. 12 years of service. Excessive force complaints. 4, all involving minorities. Use of force reviews. 6 cases of questionable judgment. Mandatory sensitivity training. Failed 3 times. Pattern of behavior complaints. Extensively documented. Williams paused. Your law enforcement career is finished. One by one, Williams pulled up each officer's history while they surrendered the symbols of authority they had just disgraced. Davis Michael. 7 years of service. Community complaints about harassment and intimidation. Multiple. Failed bias awareness training repeatedly. Inappropriate conduct toward civilians. Extensively documented. You're terminated. Henderson Christopher. 9 years of service. Racial sensitivity violations. 6 documented incidents. Failed department diversity requirements. Multiple times. Bias-related disciplinary actions. 4 cases. Career over. Torres Anthony. 5 years of service. Excessive force training. Failed twice. Community relations. Multiple negative reports. Constitutional rights violations. 2 prior incidents. You're done. Williams looked at the pile of badges on his desk. 23 years, 15 years, 12 years, 8 years, 9 years, 5 years of law enforcement experience, all ending because 6 officers couldn't see past the color of a woman's skin to recognize her authority. Collectively, you 6 represent everything that is wrong with American policing. Dr. Richardson was hired specifically to fix the exact problems you just demonstrated in the most public way possible. And your first official act was to assault her. Internal affairs investigators were already being called from their homes. The district attorney's office was being notified of potential criminal charges. The FBI Civil Rights Division was being contacted about federal violations. The mayor's emergency response team was being activated. Each of you will be hearing from multiple law enforcement agencies about criminal charges. Federal civil rights violations. Assault under color of authority. filing false reports, conspiracy to violate constitutional rights, deprivation of rights under color of law. Dr. Richardson sat in a chair with a paramedic cleaning the scrapes on her knees, her torn blazer draped over her shoulders like a battle flag, watching her former officers' careers disintegrate. She felt no satisfaction, only a deep sadness at what this revealed about the department she'd been hired to transform. The city attorney is already drafting settlement paperwork because this lawsuit is going to be the largest in municipal history. The insurance company is already calculating liability because this is going to bankrupt our coverage. The reform process that was supposed to take 5 years is now going to happen in 5 months because the federal government is going to mandate it. Williams looked at each former officer one final time. You didn't just arrest your boss. You didn't just violate someone's civil rights. You just proved to the entire world that the stereotypes about police racism are absolutely true. You've set back police-community relations by decades. You've made every good officer in this department look bad. You've given ammunition to every critic of law enforcement in America. The magnitude of their actions was only beginning to become clear. Within 30 minutes of the first cell phone video being uploaded, #PoliceChief arrested was trending in the local area. Within 1 hour, it had spread statewide. Within 2 hours, it was trending nationally. By the end of the first day, it was international news. The video progression was like watching a wildfire spread. 8:47 a.m. First video uploaded to TikTok, 1,000 views in 10 minutes. 2 p.m. International coverage begins, 2 million views. End of day 1, 15 million views across all platforms. The hashtags multiplied like digital wildfire. #RiversidePD, #racial profiling, #police reform, #black women in leadership, #justice for Chief Richardson. News anchors struggled to find words adequate to the situation. CNN, in what may be the most clear-cut case of racial profiling ever captured on video, a black woman was arrested by police officers outside a police station for the crime of being their new boss. MSNBC, 6 police officers have been fired after arresting their own police chief on her first day, proving that the bias training advocates have been demanding is not just necessary but urgent. Fox News, a police department is in crisis today after officers failed to recognize their newly appointed chief, leading to an arrest that has sparked national conversation about police procedures. The 6 officers were identified by name within 18 hours. Their social media profiles were archived and analyzed before they could delete them. Their employment histories were investigated by journalists and activists. Their previous complaints and incidents were reviewed by federal investigators. Officer Martinez, 3 prior excessive force complaints, all involving people of color. 2 failed diversity training sessions. Multiple community complaints about inappropriate comments during traffic stops. Officer Thompson, 2 internal affairs investigations for racial profiling that resulted in no discipline. 7 documented complaints about targeting minority drivers. Failed bias awareness training twice. Officer Johnson, 4 excessive force complaints against minorities. 6 use of force reviews showing a pattern of escalation. 3 failed sensitivity training attempts. Multiple witnesses reporting inappropriate racial comments. The pattern was undeniable. This wasn't an isolated incident or a single mistake. This was the predictable result of a systematic culture of bias that had been allowed to fester for years. Civil rights organizations mobilized within hours. NAACP, this incident represents everything we have been warning about regarding implicit bias in policing. When a PhD police chief can be arrested by her own officers simply for being black, the system is fundamentally broken. ACLU, we are filing formal complaints with the Department of Justice and demanding a federal investigation into the Riverside Police Department's hiring, training, and disciplinary practices. Black Lives Matter. Dr. Richardson's experience proves that no amount of education, experience, or authority protects black people from racial profiling by police. Legal scholars called it the clearest example of institutional racism ever recorded. Constitutional law experts said it violated every principle of equal protection under law. Police reform advocates said it vindicated every criticism they had ever made about law enforcement culture. 18 months later, after federal investigations, congressional hearings, and nationwide media coverage, the city of Riverside settled Dr. Richardson's civil rights lawsuit for $3.9 million, the largest settlement in the city's history and one of the largest police misconduct settlements on record. But the money, as significant as it was, couldn't undo what had happened. It couldn't erase the images of a police chief being handcuffed outside her own station. It couldn't restore the dignity that was stripped away at 7:47 a.m. on what should have been the proudest day of her career. What the money could do was fund change. Dr. Richardson used her position and the spotlight from the incident to implement the most comprehensive police reform program in the nation's history. Every officer underwent mandatory bias training, not the superficial workshops they had ignored before, but intensive, ongoing education with regular testing and evaluation. Community oversight boards were established with real power to investigate complaints and discipline officers. Body cameras became mandatory for every officer during every interaction with the public. A zero-tolerance policy for racial profiling was implemented with immediate termination for violations. The transformation was measurable and dramatic. Excessive force complaints dropped 78% in the first year. Community relations improved so significantly that public trust in police reached historic highs. Use of force incidents decreased by 65%. Racial disparities in traffic stops virtually disappeared. The FBI closed their investigation after finding systematic improvements that exceeded federal requirements. The Department of Justice cited Riverside as a model for police reform nationwide. Other cities began implementing Richardson protocols, based on her innovations. She never forgot what happened that morning, but she transformed it into something powerful. She proved that sometimes, surviving injustice and staying focused on change can reshape entire systems. The 6 officers who arrested her were never able to work in law enforcement again. Their names became synonymous with the worst impulses of police culture. They became a cautionary tale taught in police academies about the career-ending consequences of racial bias. But more importantly, their actions became a catalyst for change that spread far beyond Riverside. Those officers saw a black woman walking toward a police station and decided she didn't belong there. They saw skin color before credentials. They saw racial assumptions before individual identity. They saw their biases reflected back at them and mistook it for reality. They didn't see 20 years of law enforcement experience. They didn't see a PhD in criminal justice. They didn't see a woman specifically chosen by their mayor to lead them. They didn't see their boss. They saw what they expected to see. And they acted on those expectations. Those actions cost them their careers, cost their city $3.9 million, cost their department its credibility, and exposed a pattern of institutional racism that had infected American policing for generations. But they didn't break Dr. Amelia Richardson. They just proved exactly why she was hired in the first place. And that's the real victory. If this story opened your eyes to the reality of racial bias in policing and the urgent need for reform, please share this video and subscribe for more stories of accountability and justice. Your support helps these important stories reach the people who need to hear them. What specific changes do you think need to happen in police departments across America to prevent incidents like this? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.